Hello, welcome or welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph, and I have a wrap up for you today because it is the end of July. I'm pretty sure tomorrow is like the last day of July, and I have some stuff going on. I actually have a live show in the next like 30 minutes, and I'm going out afterwards with some friends, so I need to get ready, and I thought, why not use this as an opportunity to do kind of like a get ready with me and also talk about my books that I read in July. So, first off, I'm going to fix my hair really quick. I literally just washed it, so I'm just going to put some Next of Us High Porosity Leave-In Conditioner in my hair. This is not a makeup channel by any means, but I'm just letting you know what I'm using. I have to use this stuff because I have super curly hair, and my hair is really, like, it soaks up everything because it's so curly. It needs a lot of moisture.
I need it!
So I use this because it's really light on my hair and it feels really good for my curls. Okay, so let's talk about books.
It could change the world. On we go.
I read 5 books in July that I'm going to talk about. Some of them are in vlogs. One of those vlogs has not come out yet, and one of them has. There are some books that I did not mention, or that kind of like are from other videos, like August TBR book that I read early, and an audiobook that wasn't on the TBR, but I just needed something to listen to on my rides to work. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Oh, just look at my curls. My curls feel so much better now. Also, if you have curls, you want to like scrunch the curl when you're putting in stuff. You don't want to rake it through your hair because then you're going to damage your curl. But just a little tidbit. Okay, so 5 books. I read these 4, and then plus an audio and a digital book. So I will talk about them in the order that I read them. First off being Babel, and I'm going to talk about this while I put on some of my foundation, so I'm going to put this down. But as you can see, I loved it. So if you want my full thoughts on Babel, please go and check out that dedicated review. It ended up being an hour-long vlog and review for that because I have so many thoughts about Babel. It is probably a good chance it's going to be in my like top 10 books of the year. So that tells you a lot about my reading taste if you've never watched my videos before. I loved Babel. It is a historical fantasy, and I think it's historical first before it is fantasy because while it does have a magic system, and I said this a lot in this video, so I'm not gonna like go too deep into Babel here, that it is like the magic system is in the background and it's an important part of the plot, but we don't get it built up. I'm also using my Sailor Moon palette, which is like my new favorite palette from ColourPop. But anyway, so these are the colors. Do I have a mirror? I don't have a mirror. I adore Babel because of its social commentary, and I adore it for what it did and what it tried to say and what it tried to do. And it was very much about if you are a marginalized person who has tried to work through academia and find your place in a predominantly white institution, but put it in 1800s London and then make it about commerce and trade, and like the tokenization of individuals, and why it would be that these institutions that profit off of the suffering of other people would allow them in the first place. And it's always starting from a place of power and a place of exploitation. So I loved it for that reason because it just really brought everything to the forefront. I know I said a lot before, and I think in other videos, and I haven't really clarified that I feel like there was nuance to this, but nuance in the sense of like, if you are, this is something that I personally haven't like seen broached before, just very straightforwardly saying, so not nuance in the sense of how it was written because everything was very blunt, but that these situations are more nuanced, I think, in the way that they're not very much spoken about, or I don't hear them much about where I live and in my in academia, since I literally just finished graduate school and I live outside New York City. Unfortunately, with as populated as we are and how like progressive this area is, it's still lacking in those kinds of conversations about how people's how people's skill set in academic institutions are not properly being utilized and exploited. So I liked what it did for that. I retract what I say in saying that it was written in a nuanced fashion, because it wasn't, but more that the topics themselves, I think, are nuanced topics, and that them being brought to the forefront of the conversation in such a blunt way, I can see why that this book is really polarizing. But I thought it was fantastic. And if you hear scratching in the background, it's my cats. I don't even know if I made any sense with that. I probably still need to work through the way that I explain what it is that I'm trying to say, and I probably still need to work on my reviewing skills. So if that doesn't make sense, it's a work in progress. Anyway, moving on to the next book that I read, and I read for the live show that's about to happen today, which is Last Exit by Max Gladstone. Oh yeah, by the way, I rated Babel 5 stars. I rated this, right now it's sitting at a 3.5. I have a feeling it might move down to a 3 or a 3.25. I don't know. As I'm sitting with it, I'm having more thoughts about unhauling it, but not because I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was a bad book per se. I just think it was really long, and I don't think that it was something that, like, I think it could have been done in a lot shorter time. So what's interesting about this book is that it's kind of like these characters who are in their 30s, and it's post-epic journey. It is post Stephen King-esque story of fantasy worlds, and if you're a fan of Stephen King, chances are that you're really gonna like this book, and I'm a fan of Stephen King. So there are a lot of things in here that I had fun with, but I do think that the structure of it didn't work for me. What was wonderful for this was that it was beautifully queer. It was a mainly Sapphic story, though we did have a diverse set of characters, and it talked a lot about contemporary social justice issues here within America. It talked about housing crises, and it talked about, like, again, focus in academia, because all these characters went to Yale, and they kind of found a way while they were in, I think, the engineering department at Yale. Or was it math department? I don't remember. But they found this way to create portals to other worlds that allow them to have all these magical powers. And that's very cool. There's also a lot to do with conversations about how math can lead into something fantastical, and how the more that we understand about the universe, the less that we actually know. And I thought that was really fun. So there were these really interesting conversations about how whether being able to utilize more technology actually provides us more opportunities from understanding each other and the universe, or if it actually makes us more distant because our levels of expectation have changed. Also, the amount of power that systems of government have over us allow them more insight to our personal lives, and so the way that we consume is more curated to the current economy. It was a lot. There was a lot happening. So if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about that, again, I think this book and the next book that I'm going to talk about are both in a dedicated blog. So there's more there. And also I will link the live show that we're about to do to that, because that's going to be an hour long, and you can hear lots of things that we have to say about that. So while it was very, I think, interesting in the social commentary, and again, the queer love story was wonderful, it was the pacing for me. There was action, there was some gore, so that was fun. It was like horror-ish sci-fi, I'm gonna say. Mostly sci-fi. I would say sci-fi, then fantasy, then horror, because the horror was like minimal for me. But that's my taste. I also read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and you can tell by the amount of tabs that are in here that I really had a good time with this. This is also in the vlog that I did for a horror reading vlog that has not come out yet, but I thought this book was a lot of fun. I ended up rating it 4. I want to say 4 or like 4.5. I think it was 4.5, and I rounded it up to a 5 just because it was a ton of fun. It was very gory. I will say trigger warning for harm to animals, because that is one of my big triggers, but I knew that going into it, and I was warned about it, so warning to you if you can handle that. It's pretty gory, and I think one of my favorite points of this is kind of like, I love a horror that when you can get me into the head of someone who's doing something horrible and see their actions and go, oh no, are they about to do what I think they're going to do? So you can hear them, you can like see them justifying their actions in their head, and it sounds logical because you don't know what's reality and what's not reality. And that was a lot of fun. Also, if you're a fan of basketball, you're really gonna like this book, I think. Okay, again, all of those thoughts are more fully in a, again, dedicated vlog, so I'm not going to go too much into them there. This book is This Weightless World, and this is one of my 5-star predictions for 2023. I am currently about halfway through it, and I'm going to soft DNF this. Now, there are tabs in here, and there's a lot that I have to say about this in relation to social justice, and the current economy. It was written in 2019, but everything is still relevant, and it's hitting really close to home in the sense that it's about this, something that's happening in the world right now is something about the United States government in some ways admitting that there's aliens, but like nobody cares.
Do you care for me? Interesting.
And that's really what this book is about. NASA and the US government comes out in 2019 saying, hey, we found evidence of aliens on another planet, another solar system, and we are sending people to go explore it. And the rest of the world's like, cool, whatever. Starbucks makes a space-themed latte. The main character is a teacher who lost his job, and like, life still goes on. Nobody gives a shit. There's another main character who is a young black boy. It takes place in Chicago. One of his friends dies of gun violence, and like, it's not even on the news. Like, nobody really cares. So life still goes on, and what do we do with that information? Some people take it to further extremes, saying it's like the end of days. Other people are like, if we need to take care of our planet, maybe the aliens are trying to contact us because they want our help, or we need to help them, or they need to help us because Earth is going to shit. But what do we do? Like, they're not here. They're sending us signals. We're trying to communicate with them. But if they're just communicating with us, it could take decades for anything to change. Plus, it's a 75 light year difference. So like, it's going to take 75 years for the messages that we sent back to that planet for them to even get it, which means everyone who's alive right now, when we know this information, nothing is going to happen in their lifetime. So what do we do with that? And it's really, really interesting, but it's also really depressing because everything is very nihilistic. And it's just like, I need some positivity right now. So I switched gears. I think I'm gonna have to pause this video and come back to it because I need to start the live show now. So you will see the rest of this video after the live show. Right now, I'm going to continue recording this video after the live show because I actually have run out of time to record. So you will see me in an hour and a half from now, finishing talking about the last 2 books that I read in July. Hello, it is an hour later. I have yogurt and we finished the live show. So that was a struggle. If you want to see an entire review for that, the link is below. It was on Max's channel. We tried to say positive things, but ultimately I think we all ended up settling on a 3. So I know at the beginning of this video that I said I was making it a 3.5, but I think I'm going to round it down to a 3. It's really hard to talk about this book without going into spoilers. And while there are some things that were fun, I just don't know that the author's writing style works for me. While I do want to pick up This Is How You Lose the Time War, because that won awards and everyone that I know says it's really good. This one, the flashback sequences and things like that, it wasn't it for me. So I hope that someone else likes this, but I can see why we all kind of settled around the same thing. Anyway, moving on to the next book that I read. So I read an audiobook in July, and I listened to, oh my god, what the fuck does the Constitution actually say? So you should sponsor me. I'm giving this 5 stars, not because I thought it was particularly great. I just think that the goal of the book that it set out to do was accomplished. So what happens is there is one narrator who is reading word for word the Constitution and also goes into the Bill of Rights and all amendments. And then the author takes what was said and puts it into common vernacular. And after each point, then makes commentary about what the purpose of that specific law or bill was, and then talks about, is that still applicable today? So some interesting fun facts that I learned along the way. One being that I don't think that this is any kind of failing of my education system or the teachers that I had in high school, because some of these things, it was a lot of refresher things that I did learn in school. But what is important to note is that our American Constitution is one of the oldest constitutions in the entire world, and that it was written that the plan was, I believe it might have been Jefferson who wrote something to Adams saying that the Constitution was supposed to be revised into more updated terminology every 19 years or 20 years or something like that, and it hasn't happened this entire time, because it's a lot easier to have it be misconstrued in the way that people need. And then talked about another part that I found interesting was where it talked about the Prohibition era. It was saying that during the Prohibition era, companies like Walgreens were prescribing alcohol, and those prescriptions were paid by members of the mafia. So at the time, and also of the police force. So at the time, alcohol was being prescribed for medicinal purposes. And so that money was one of the means in which Walgreens was able to gain so much success, especially in the wake of the Depression and things like that. So that was very interesting. Some interesting facts about gerrymandering, and I believe that the same author has another book called What the Fuck is Gerrymandering or something like that. So I think I'm going to write a more in-depth review about this on Goodreads and Storygraph, because while I feel like some of the reviews that I saw people writing and the reasons why they didn't like this was because they didn't like what it had to say about certain political parties, I think that what the points that the author was trying to make were relevant, right? Because the point of this is like, we are establishing how it is that we've justified the means in which we function. And this is why they need updating, because they're not functioning the way that they were intended. So there's a whole other section there that I think I'm going to write about in that review in regards to rights of the militia and what ends up being classified as a militia given the time span in comparison to the social needs of 200 years ago and now. But those are some things that I need to kind of like mull over. And then also I read early just because I needed something to read in the car ride, and this is in my August TBR, but I read it now because I just needed something to read. I ended up reading Volume 4 of Way the House Husband, and I give it 5 stars. It was so much fun. It was so silly. So the main character, who is a former Yakuza member, was battling a cat who stole his fish at the market, and as he was going through, he was kind of like buying things for his house, which was silly. And I think my favorite chapter is when he goes to the beach with his wife, and so he's just having a wholesome date with his wife, and then this volleyball comes and hits him or hits his wife or something. And the people who were playing volleyball were actually from a former rival gang, and they kind of diss him and say, oh yeah, we won the Yakuza volleyball tournament and you guys suck. And they walk away, and he goes, yeah, I don't want to start any trouble. So like, yeah, whatever, they won the tournament. And his wife ends up becoming more aggressive than him and saying, you're going to let them diss you like that? And then challenges them to a volleyball game where they start making lots of Transformation Magical Girl references. It was so great. And then following that, there was a chapter where the husband is on a lunch date with a bunch of old ladies from his neighborhood, and he's describing things that his relationship with his wife, but he only knows how to talk about it in relation to using gang terminology. So they think his wife actually is abusive, but she's not. because he's using words that he thinks are positive, like things that make her sound really aggressive, but really this is just him putting her onto this mafia pedestal. But really she's really sweet and they love each other. So she calls him to make him some fish for dinner, and the way that he responds to her is so sus. But it's really sweet and I love it. Anyway, that's it. I had a good time, and I'll see you later. Bye.
On we go.
What's it making, Mr. Wonka?